Hello, welcome back to Touchline Talk. Here with a really special episode. As you can see here, Jack Brazil is with us. So, without any further ado, we will start the interview. Jack, looking forward to getting on with this one. It's been a long time coming, and thank you for giving up your time, Jack. And yeah, looking forward to listening and hearing about your journey and obviously the role and position you're in now and where you've been in the summer and stuff is quite exciting. So I think a lot of people are going to be quite interested to hear about it.
No problem. Great to be here, guys. It's lovely to have the invite. So I'm looking forward to having the conversation.
Honestly, yeah, Jack, cheers for this. But you always set yourself like your bars high, and you've obviously got a fantastic surname, which obviously set the bar even higher for you in terms of a football career. So you've got that to live up to, and you've been brilliant so far. But yeah, your journey is very, very interesting. I was looking through your CV over the last, I don't know, while now anyway, and obviously got you to do a written Q&A, but now to actually speak to you is fantastic. But yeah, it's you're currently in a fantastic role. So we were just talking off the record just now, weren't we, about the flexibility of football and the randomness that it throws up. But is your current role one of the ones that's maybe most random compared to the situation you're in terms of the flexibility of it, or how does that fit into some of your other roles at the moment, or in the past, I should say?
Yeah, it's great to be here. PSV is a massive football club, and sort of being, as Simon understands, an international coach as an Englishman is a little bit rare. To be in a position with a big club internationally on the European continent, particularly with the language barrier we have, is quite strange and sometimes quite a challenge. And it's something that you have to work on every day. And if you're not, then you fall behind, because the reality is I'm one of two international coaches within the club. The other one moved here 30 something years ago, so his Dutch is fine. And mine is coming, but still it's difficult for me. But I think that's normal when you compare yourself to a native speaker rather than other people who are second language speakers around you. And I'm basically in an environment where I'm the only person who is a second language speaker within the club. Right. I find that quite difficult, but that's a big challenge here. The club itself is massive. It speaks for itself in terms of the players that it brings out. It speaks, the quality and the success it's had in the past, and it's even had in the recent period as well, has been phenomenal. And to compete with the likes of Ajax and Feyenoord every year is extremely impressive, considering, particularly with Ajax, the budget differential. So we have a lot to do. We have a lot to catch up. We're fortunately a little bit more of the underdogs in Dutch football, but that's, as an Englishman, that's a position we enjoy being in.
Certainly.
Jack, just one thing really quickly, because obviously one of the big things that we're trying to really get out of this podcast and from the experiences is language. And as you said, the positions and the roles that we are in, the need to better understand not only a culture, but the language comes hand in hand. I definitely, for one, have gone through the process here in Spain where I've had some really, really good days and some really, really tough days and down days with the language. What would you say in terms of your experiences that you've had from either a cultural perspective or a language perspective that has made it either really rewarding or really, really challenging? And I guess, what advice would you give other coaches that are looking to think about doing something similar to overcome some of those hurdles?
Yeah, I mean, I was terrible at school. If I go back there at languages, I didn't care one bit. It didn't bother me. It wasn't the environment to learn. It was the most terrible environment to learn a language I can imagine, because there was no necessity, and I was bored stupid the whole time. I don't need to learn how to say I want to go to the zoo to see a monkey. It doesn't interest me. I want to learn about what I'm interested in. So when it came to football, and my first sort of experience of coaching in a second language properly was probably Norway. I'd had it with Mongolia, I'd had it in Gibraltar, Spain, but never enough where it became a real necessity. And in Norway, it was a necessity based on the age I was working with when I first got there. And the first weeks, it was like pulling teeth. It was really difficult, and like an hour a day on Duolingo, and that was difficult. And I couldn't find anyone who would teach me like football Norwegian apart from the other coaches, and they'd give me a hand, but then after 5 minutes they'd get bored because I was so slow. So it was basically do it yourself. So I learned pretty quickly that probably within 6 months I was taking sessions in Norwegian, and yes, it was bad Norwegian, but I was taking sessions in it, and the kids that were 8, 9 could understand me. And then it developed from there, and I started getting more confident with it. But at the time, I was also coaching an under-16 group, and they helped me a lot because they were kind of bridging the gap between English and Norwegian, because they were very good at English. And if there was anything that needed translating, I could then go in and translate it. I had 2 kids that were of an immigrant background. They moved to Norway when they were quite young. So they didn't have the education that the other Norwegian kids had with regards to the English within the schools. So I had to speak Norwegian with them, which was great. So then my sessions were basically half and half with the 16s, or full Norwegian with the younger players, and that was like a really good experience. But it was difficult. There's a couple of difficult ones, and I don't know how much detail I can go into. But there was one point I told a set of 10-year-olds to pair up, and I used the wrong word in Norwegian, and I told them to do that with each other.
No.
And the coach that I was with didn't tell me until he went back into the trainer's room afterwards. So I'm in front of a load of parents doing this session, and then he's gone, you'll never guess what Jack told the under-10s to do today. Stitch me up good and proper. So like, there are some really tough days and some really good days. But like that feeling when 6 months and you first take that session, you're like, I didn't speak a word of English for the last hour and a half. Wow. Yeah. Amazing feeling. Really, really wow. And then when I came to the Netherlands, I got a lot more structured teaching. So my understanding of grammar, my understanding of how to actually speak the language properly is much clearer. But I think that also brings an anxiety with it, because in Norway, I just learned from speaking and it was ad hoc. And now I understand the grammar. I make a mistake and I get caught in the mistake instead of thinking of the next thing. And the person fully understands what I'm saying. And it's like numerous times you have to get over this little hurdle. And each time the hurdle gets lower and you care less and less, but you have to just go and do it. That's tough. It's really, really tough. But I still sit there in adult meetings that we have now, and I understand everything that's going on around me. And I can't think of the Dutch word, and I have to go back to English just to find someone to help me connect and bridge that gap. And I would say to anyone that wants to do it, you have to be really, really brave and just go for it. But you have to put yourself in a situation where it's necessary. And if it's not necessary, you don't care. And you go, like, people say to me, I'm learning Spanish. Okay, then how many people do you speak Spanish to every day? How many people do you regularly speak to who can give you good feedback on whether your grammar's right? That's a completely different story to I'm doing 3 Duolingo lessons a day.
Yeah. I mean, I agree.
Yeah. Simon, obviously, your background. We were speaking about that in your interview, about you and your journey into Spanish, and where it's taken you now. So it's interesting to hear that from someone else in terms of a lot of similarities, but just nice in terms of different languages. But that sort of one goal of immersion is massively key. And if you're a young coach wanting to jump into foreign coaching, I think it's one of those things we've spoken about, jumping in to take the opportunity. But even just in terms of a language, you might not lead anywhere from coaching, but you are going to develop a skill somewhere else as well. So it's very interesting to hear that.
I think. Just very quickly in terms of what Jack was just saying there, I definitely agree with him on, you have to put yourself in that situation. You have to go and be willing to put yourself out of the comfort zone. And then you've got to have the ability where you're going to make mistakes, and sometimes they're obviously going to be big ones or awkward ones, but that you're going to make those mistakes. And if you've got people that are going to be there to support you, and you don't mind making those mistakes, ultimately you are going to step forwards, you are going to progress, and you are going to get where you want to get to at the end. And we have those similar situations that we ask players to do. We have the same as coaches. We have to make those mistakes. We have to make those errors, and it's your personality ultimately that is going to be your barrier to if you make. If you're able to have success or not, and you've got to get past that sort of pride aspect and not wanting to make mistakes to be able to progress and go forwards.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of progression, though, myself and Simon, we've covered over introductions of ourselves and the journey we've taken. But I'd love to know more a little bit about your journey, and looking at your CV and. Obviously with uni coaching at Coventry and working as a community coach in Fulham, were they your first outings into coaching?
Yeah, it was. I've always been fortunate to be really involved in football. my father's worked in football. My father played professionally. My sister now plays professionally. So we see who got the talent. It wasn't me. I ended up with two left feet. So people say I got the brains, but I didn't get those either. I'm just a bit.
Yeah, definitely got the coaching pathway.
So exactly. So I can move a magnet on a board, and it's got me so far. But yeah, so I think I was about 16, and I realised all my friends were getting picked up by clubs, and I wasn't good enough. I wasn't getting the call that they were getting. So I made the decision to go into coaching and just give it a go because I really love football. I didn't want to be away from it. Took my level 1, and during that time it was work experience, and my dad was at Fulham, and he said, do you want to come down here for 2 weeks? And it sounded great. So I went down to Fulham, worked in their foundation for 2 weeks, and I really loved it. Started coaching properly the next season when I was still 16. Took a under 15s team from our local grassroots, and it just went from there. And pretty much every year I've taken a linear jump to the next step. It's quite weird when you look back, considering I've been coaching now for this coming up will be my 14th season. Each year I've took a linear step forwards or gone to a higher age group, or I've gone to a better club in terms of, you know, what they're competing in at the first team, or also the level of their academy. It's quite an odd experience to be that linear, but it's also been really exciting.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. It definitely took you to some interesting places. So Turks and Caicos, was it right, as a guest coach?
Yeah.
It just, you know, how was that experience? Obviously, it's a FIFA nation, but not a very developed FIFA nation, if it makes sense. So how was that guest coaching experience?
Yeah, amazing. It kind of came from the year before. So I took a year out between my sixth form, so like the end of my college and going to university. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I knew I was going to university, but I had to decide what to do. So I started just sending emails out to basically every football association, every first division club in world football. I sent thousands and thousands of emails like, I've got money, sort of, I'm willing to travel, I've saved up this, and I just want to come and coach for your association. And I got a response from the Turks and Caicos Islands and the American Samoan Football Association. So those were the two, and also a guy in Mongolia. And that was my list. So the first, basically the Turks and Caicos one initially broke down because they changed technical director. So that was why I went to Mongolia in the end. But then the new technical director, I just sent him an email on the off chance, and he responded. He said, I can't have a coach, but how about you bring a team? So I brought my whole university football team there. So while I was coaching, so I was in the day going off and coaching the men's national team, the under 17s, etc. I basically spent the whole year training this other group of football team to become coaches as well. And they were off coaching all the kids on the island.
Amazing.
So for 3 weeks, we basically ran the Football Association's program. It was amazing, as well as me coaching the university team to play against all the island teams. And I did that the following summer as well. So it was amazing. Like that was also where I realized language was really important, because we had in that group, or in the groups, particularly in the 17 national team and the men's national team, were a lot of Haitian players who'd come over and sort of settled in the Turks and Caicos Islands. A lot of them were young kids when they moved to the Turks and Caicos Islands, and they came on boats, for example, and it was quite difficult to communicate with them because some of them didn't speak any English, or they just spoke like a Haitian French Creole. That was my first moment of going, this is a real challenge. I need to learn how to overcome this, because this is a first world language. It's French. It's spoken in more than one country. It's not like when I was in Mongolia. Yeah, if you learn Mongolia, it's only spoken in Mongolia. It's a bit of a different experience being in there where they're speaking French. I thought this would be a really useful thing to have, not just for the Turks and Caicos Islands, but for further across the world. And it was a really sort of moment.
At that point, how old were you? I mean, that's quite a big experience to have. What was that, 10 years ago now?
Especially then,
yeah.
So I go to Mongolia. I was 20 years old, and I sat on the bus going from Nottingham to London Heathrow, and I'm going to swear, but I shat my pants. I was so nervous. I remember, like, my dad dropped me off at 1 o'clock because I was on the 6 a.m. flight, and he dropped me at the airport, and he just looked at me through the window, and my eyes were like, crap, what am I doing? But it formed me. Like, it was such a good experience to be that far away, and have to get on a plane, sort of visa, sort all these things, realize that, crap, if I want to live somewhere else, I've got to have all these things. And then I was 21 when I went to the Turks and Caicos Islands. And again, like, amazing experience. University were, really good with us. They gave us all some funding because they saw the advantage of the experience for everyone. And several people went on to some really good roles, not just based on that, but also speaking a lot about that when it came to the interviews and stuff, and contacted me like, oh, what do you do outside of study? Oh, I did this. Well,
Yeah.
people want to hear about paradise. They want to hear about the most beautiful beach in the world. They want to hear about it. So it starts a conversation.
No, fair play.
Jack, do you think that those experiences so young have I wouldn't say fast tracked you, but they've pushed you on in terms of levels of confidence, experience, personality, to allow you to feel more comfortable in some of your next roles and positions?
Yeah, it almost built an armor, because there were some really difficult moments on several of those trips when I was in university and when I was going and coaching for a couple of months here, a couple of months there. There's no way out. You have to accept that you're going to be really uncomfortable. It's going to be really difficult. And there's going to be lots of moments you're sat in a room where you don't have a clue what people are talking about. And it's not going to be remedied inside 48 hours. That's going to take, several months of hard work to remedy. And that was a real learning period for me to be able to understand what I'm going into. And then there's been some really difficult moments since, like, I can even put it to the Cayman Islands. There were several moments where I thought, I don't want this anymore. I need to come home, etc., etc. And you get yourself back on the plane through tears and through difficulty of you're leaving your family, you're leaving your girlfriend, you're leaving everything you care about, and you're going to go and follow this. But then through it all, by the end of it, it makes me much, much better as a coach. And it's definitely grown my personality to much more confident in who I am in many different difficult situations.
No, that's interesting to hear, because Simon, you've spent a lot more time in abroad than I have, and obviously I've been to a few different places in smaller spells. But yeah, Jack, in terms of your roles, like Turks and Caicos, Mongolia, you mentioned Cayman Islands, do you think those early experiences have shaped your philosophy or your coaching style, maybe to like even to the point you're at now?
Yeah, I think my coaching style is much more dependent on the culture now. Like, I recognize where the issues are within a culture and how to respect those without tearing it down.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like, when you go to Mongolia, you're the English guy, and it's like, wow, amazing. There's an English guy who wants to coach us the Premier League. This is amazing. And you go to the Cayman Islands, like, whoa. But then you go to Norway and you go to the Netherlands, and they go, and?
Yeah.
And? Yeah. Like, you don't get the same response. Then you have to learn how to deal with it within the culture it is. And you're not going to change their culture. You're not going to change their background, because they've worked that way for many years and it's been successful for them. So then what you have to do is take what you're really good at and understand how that can fit within the context. And, what is the football truth of what you've experienced already? Really work backwards from what you've experienced. What was the objectivity in that? What was the truth? Work backwards and then put it into almost an objective reference that you can then use within any context, but maybe you have to change it a little bit to be a little bit more contextually relevant, so you don't just get shut up kind of attitude towards you, which can happen when you go in as a bulldog. I've been in a bulldozer. This is what I think. Yeah, all right, whatever. What does that mean? Yeah. Tell us why. You have to understand what the context, the culture is. I'll give you an example. In Norway, you're not allowed the elite teams before under 13. So you're not allowed to select players before under 13 in Norway. There's several clubs which have dispensation for under 12s. So if you're a top club, you can have a dispensation, but you're only allowed to create an elite group from players that are already in your club. So from under 6s basically to under 12s, it's just a grassroots club. So you could have, if it was Manchester United, it'd be Manchester United grassroots. Anyone can sign up, doesn't matter what level, under 6 to under 12s. And then they pick an elite under 12 group from that grassroots system. Yep. I disagreed. I thought from under 6, we should have a select team, and we should have under 9s. We should have a select team, and we should have offer an extra training session for them a week. Blah blah. No, you can't do that. Whoa, no. We've done this way, and we've always done it this way. and I wanted to do extra training with the group. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do that. There was no. This is how we do it. So I had to be okay, right? Now I've got to reassess how I can do things in a different way. So then what we did was we started to incentivize players that trained more. So it wasn't they were the best. The ones that trained the most and showed the most eagerness got an extra training session every week.
Right, okay.
So I got the same goal. I got where I wanted to. I had to work out in the context how I was going to make it happen to get where I wanted to go. So that kind of gives you an example of understanding what's happened, what's happening, and how to put them together.
Yeah. That's interesting because obviously it does combine your style, your philosophy, everything, your beliefs. But like you said, you have to adapt the ways of getting there, don't you? That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I think, the experiences and the range of experiences you've already had at that point and to now probably now puts you, as a really all-rounded coach, having a really good understanding of, okay, if you were now to go to a new country, your understanding of how to adapt and how to pose those questions probably then is, potentially would be completely different. I imagine it would be a case of more listening, learning, and seeing what the landers are then taking it from there, I would imagine.
Most definitely. And, I've lived more of my adult life away from the UK than I have in the UK. So then that creates a challenge in itself because, one day I do want to go back. It is my ambition to go and coach in England one day. I'd almost feel a foreigner in my own land. That's going to be a really weird experience. And I know it will come. And I go back on holiday sometimes and I visit family and I feel this isn't quite as I remember it. This is a little bit different. So I think that exactly what you're saying is I can adapt really quickly, but then I need to also understand that you don't just sit there for 6 months and watch. You have to have that point where you sit there and you offer something valuable, which is of value. And it is good. It's not just something that someone else has said before, and you add a value to the room based on the experiences you've got. Because if you don't add that, what's the point in all the experience you've had? What's the point in all of that reflection you've had? You have to add something if you're in a room based on whichever country you're in.
Ultimately,
I think that's...
Oh, God, sorry, I was going to say ultimately.
Go on, Lloyd. Go on.
Just say ultimately, I guess it gets to the point where they then look at you, don't they, and think, well, what's the value of having you around if you're not going to bring value to us?
Precisely.
Yeah, I think just on that, I think, with, like you were saying, Jack, in terms of the different experiences, I think, okay, it also provides opportunity for discussion. And you say to the club, so look, I've been in these different places, I've seen some of these different things happening. These are some of my experiences. And then it gets the club almost to really sort of evaluate what they're doing and go, okay, yeah, we really believe in this. Or actually, you then delve into more depths of, okay, this is the philosophy. Why do we do this? Okay, could we tweak that part to be better? Or could we do something different? It's like we said before in terms of trying to incentivize players to train more. And it's finding those different things, having those conversations based on your experience and go, right, okay, this is what I've seen before. Could we do this here? And then it starts that conversation. And that's obviously ultimately where progress can be made. And we start to then explore different areas to move forward as coaches, players, and as a country.
Yeah, exactly. And when you offer that suggestion, you have to be confident in what you're saying. So you can't just sit back and think, oh, I'm just going to throw something out there. And then you have to also be careful that you understand it's not just the old club, because I've always been mindful that, when I move here, they go, yeah, but this isn't Norway. And luckily, no one's ever said that to me. Or, all right, you're not in the previous club you're at. You're not Vålerenga anymore. Like, this is different. So then you have to be really mindful, not just to keep going, oh, at my old club I did. No. You're not there anymore. Think about a more objective and smart way of framing it and giving the information over to the new employers and the new colleagues you have.
Yeah. No, very good point. Very good point. But yeah, talking about your new employers, so PSV is probably the one where people want to listen to. But before we do get to that bit, could you just give us a brief overview of what you did in Gibraltar and the Cayman Islands, and maybe how those jobs came about? Because obviously they were a part of your journey as well, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, the Gibraltar one, again, came from all those thousands of emails. It just was a link, and I went over just for I think about a month. I went over and I coached across the border. Just took the pre-season for the English players within Europa Point. So Europa Point had like a Spanish team and an English team, and they mixed them together to then play in the Gibraltarian League. So I was taking the English boys most days, and then the Spanish boys had to come twice a week to the training to then play games.
Right.
So that was what I did. I ran the preseason to make sure the English boys were fit and in good shape, and they had training every day. So that was good. It was a really nice experience. And that was probably my first experience in terms of actually being able to instantly command a little bit of the language, because I could think of a few things in Spanish which I could say, which in Mongolian I could count to 10. In French I could count to 10. Like, it doesn't mean anything. But in Spanish I can explain myself a little bit based on my school. So maybe I did actually learn something of that. Maybe I lied earlier. And then
told you about to find a monkey in the zoo.
Yeah, exactly. Find space in the midfield, the same thing. And then, so that was really nice. And yeah, it just came from the emails. Someone responded to me. The university was really good with me. They had some funding left over for international experience. I said, yeah, go on, go. So again, but I did spend quite a bit of my own money on these experiences. These weren't for free. I wasn't getting paid. In Mongolia, I got accommodation and I got flights. So I paid for my food. In Turks and Caicos, the university paid for our flights. The Football Association paid for our accommodation. I paid for all the food and everything. And the same with Gibraltar. They paid for the accommodation, but I paid for my flights, and they helped with food. So these things happened like that. So you have to spend to accumulate in the future. And then the Cayman Islands. Yeah, I just woke up one February morning in my freezing cold university house in Coventry. And I had a missed call from the Cayman Islands, and I went, yeah, all right, go on. Cheers. And anyway, this man calls me back, and I just, yeah, all right. So I answered it. You connected with me on LinkedIn. Okay, cool. And I'd done the same as I did with the FAs. I'd connected with loads of people on LinkedIn. I'm guessing Virgil, his name was. He hadn't checked his LinkedIn for maybe 6 months. And he just managed to find my number somehow. And he called me. I always want English coaches, or not English coaches. I really want a coach to come out and do a 2-week camp. Are you available over Easter? Yeah, all right. Okay. So I get this ticket through. I'm going to run a camp for 2 weeks. I arrive. No one's there. I'm stood at the airport with my bags. I'm thinking I've been stitched up here. I'm stood in the Caribbean. 34 degrees. I'm sweating. I've just come from London Heathrow via Coventry. It's warm. Stood there in my jeans and everything. And anyway, this guy comes in this massive van with a football on the side, honking his horn, picks me up. Okay, we want you to run a camp 9 till 3, and then after that we have our teams trained, so we want you to train with them 3:30 till 6:30, and then if you enjoy that, then there's the men's team train at 6:30 till 8:30, and that was it. For 16 days straight, I did that. And
wow.
they took me for a meal because my girlfriend came as well, because he thought, I might be able to make this a bit of a holiday. So we shared her flight costs. Might be able to make this a bit of a holiday. This sounds nice. Hardly saw her. She spent the whole day on the beach, so I think she was very happy. She enjoyed it a lot. And it came to the end. They took me for some food and said, okay, we'd like to take you full time in August. That was it. So I moved full time in August, and I lived there for two and a bit years. I took what was called the Academy Sports Club, was the club itself. I took their men's team in the Cayman Islands Premier League, which was at best a semi-professional, like 2 teams, or maybe ours was completely amateur. We had a couple of boys who worked for the owner of the club. We had a couple of boys who got cars because they put some coaching hours into the youth. Like, they called it semi-professional. It was semi-professional at the most stretch you could stretch it. And these guys were great. It was just phenomenal. And they'd never won a trophy before. They won the second tier and to get promotion the year before. And we went on to win our first trophy in the second year. And the most important thing was, I think 14 out of the 24 players we had in our squad went on to study at university in the United States on a soccer scholarship. So that was like the most rewarding thing. We got kids off Ireland, and we got them a better education that they could have got if they stayed in the Cayman Islands. So alongside that, I also worked with a coaching company called ESM, and that was basically my main wage was through that, and that was private lessons, kids pay to play model. But that gave me the opportunity to then coach in the evening with the men's team and be really competitive. I can't say enough about it. if anyone wants to get on a ladder and just experience something and be able to build something with no interference, find something like that, because I could make all my mistakes well out of any sort of floodlight, any sort of body looking at me. I made all my mistakes, and I still make them now, but I got a lot of them out of the way in that 2 years.
No, fantastic. Yeah, he's fantastic. Very different to Norway.
I think that's credit. I think that is credit. Just one thing. Am I right in thinking that you did your A license over in New Zealand? Was that linked with Cayman Islands? Was that just after?
No, I was linked with it. So I applied for the A license, and then I realised it was 6 blocks to fly to England. And when you're talking £1,000 return flight on top of £4,000 if you actually get on the course in the first place, and then I actually got a rejection immediately. So I thought, So I connected. Obviously, I sent a lot of connection requests out on LinkedIn, and I found out that the head of the coach education, I was connected with him, and I just sent him a message asking if there was any courses in that area of the world, in the OFC region. And they ran a New Zealand A license, and it was in 2 blocks. Well, that's a lot more affordable than 6. And it was a damn sight cheaper in terms of the course itself. So there was actually 2 of us from the Caribbean. We flew over, someone who was the technical director of the Turks and Caicos Islands as well. So we flew over to New Zealand, and we did block 1, and then we came back, and then we did block 2. And it just coincided that block 2 was at the start of me moving to Norway. So I flew from the Cayman Islands to Norway, unloaded my stuff, and then went Norway to New Zealand, and then back, and then started my job in Oslo.
Because have you done 2 A licenses? Am I right in thinking that? Did you do the other one with the English?
Did the one with the English FA as well.
And how was the difference between that? Because I'm fascinated to know. I'm sure the watchers are absolutely fascinated to know some of the differences between the 2.
Without impacting upon my chance of getting on the pro license with UEFA in the future. No, I'm playing. The New Zealand one was excellent. I really, really enjoyed it. The coach educator, Rob Sherman, who was the lead on the course, was world class, top level. Rob was excellent. And the surrounders, the people that surrounded it, Owen Prosser, Steve Dillon, and many, many more guest speakers and people who organised the course. I can't even name them all. Fabian Otter in the goalkeeping department. It was just top. It was just excellently organised. And there were long days as well. Like, we were in the classroom sometimes 8 o'clock, and we weren't finishing until after we'd done our group work, 8, 9, 10 at night. It was really, really committed. And I found sometimes with the UEFA license, the content was like really good. There was some good stuff, but it was like, okay, have dinner at 6 and then we're done. And I'm there for 3 days. And I'm going, come on, give me more. And the energy in me wants more, and I want more to learn. And I'm flying in from Norway. It's costing me, each time it's coming in, it's costing me £200 return flight. I need more than just, we start at 10 o'clock on the first day and we're finished by 6. And then the next day is 9 till 5. And the next day is 9 till 3. And then everyone goes home. Yeah, I want more. And that was my feeling. So I felt, in terms of the content, the New Zealand A license was absolutely fantastic, and the UEFA license was very good as well with the content. I just wanted more all the time. I wanted to feel like I'd come a long way. But then also the other side to that was I did that during COVID, so then it made it even more difficult for the tutors to come and visit me in Norway because of the blocks. So then I didn't get as much of the in situ visits as someone in the UK, or England I should say, because the FA structure would have got. So that impacted me more than others. So that probably prejudices me quite a bit as well.
Credit to you for doing two A licenses in different federations and completely different parts of the world as well. I mean, that must have been absolutely fantastic to experience for sure.
Loved it. And I got an invite to go on the New Zealand Pro license, or at least apply to I should say. I got the invite to apply based on having the New Zealand A license, and I was really close. And the only thing that put me off in the end was the cost of the flights to go back. And I think it was a 3 block, this one. It was just going to be too much for me. But just everything around it and the whole organisation, it wasn't just football education. Within the area that we did it, it was called the AUT Millennium. There was athletics, there was rugby, there was all these different sports going on. And I thought, this is elite sport. This is top sport. This is not just learning to be a football coach. This is learning about coaching overall, and bit different. It was very good.
If you can steal anything from the All Blacks, then I'm sure that would also be quite useful, no?
Yeah, spot if there's any dirt on the under-17s floor at PSV now, don't worry.
It's interesting, you talk about like just those fine details and, joking about dirt on the floor, but elite sport, when you watch these all or nothing or whatever it may be, those fine details are what makes you elite. And it's interesting to see that one course has really taught so much, I guess. So it's fantastic to hear. But yeah, so Cayman Islands, A license, Norway, and then and now PSV. So what's your role within PSV? How did it come about, and where do you see it taking yourself?
So, yeah, in lockdown 2020, as the really interesting, fun person I was, everyone learnt an instrument or something like that. I watched every single Manchester City game under Pep Guardiola for the first half of the season, and put together a massive report on, if I was Real Madrid, how would I play the second leg? And then on top of that, I then made a report on how they built up and how the front five players acted in the build-up, to how they basically stretched the pitch to make the spaces for the other players. And this just morphed into a massive project about Manchester City. And I did one also about Sheffield United, because they had overlapping centre-backs, as you do. That's really fun. And I posted it on Twitter, and I got quite a lot of people really interested in it. And I sent it out to a lot of people. And someone asked me for a phone call. I had a FaceTime with him and spoke through for about an hour. And it just turned out he was the under-19s assistant at PSV. And we kept in touch for about a year. He gave me a call probably March of the following year, after we started talking the May of the previous year, so 10 months. There's some roles coming up at PSV. Would you be interested in putting your CV in? Yeah, sure. So I sent my CV over to him, and they invited me over. I flew over, took a session with the 13s, did some presentations based on my coaching methodology and sort of playing style, and what we'd spent a lot of time creating together at Vålerenga in Norway. And I went back, and 2 weeks later they offered me a job. So I came in initially to work with the methodology, so how we coach, how we build a line between basically our under 9s all the way through to our under 21s. And I was working with the video analysis department quite heavily on that, and also just coaching with whoever needed me. So I was a spare coach for the first year, which was great, because I met and got to know all of the coaches, all the players. I wasn't kind of siloed with the 15s or the 17s or the 21s. Meaning I only got to know them. I got to know every kid, every age, every coach. And that was a really good experience for me to be involved in it so deeply. And then last year, I took on the 17s assistant role, and then maintained the sort of methodology roles, and then also added some stuff for the international. Now COVID's over, however you want to deal with that as a statement, deal with it. We have been able to travel to our partner clubs. So we have partner clubs in Austin FC, Chivas Guadalajara in Mexico, Cruzeiro in Brazil, and Jumbo Kayando Motors in Korea. And the aim is, we as PSV, we're fan-owned, as membership basis. We can't compete with City Football Group. We can't compete with Red Bull Football Group, because we can't buy clubs. But what we can do is create partnerships to be able to share information and share systems the same way they do. So then part of my role this year has been tightening those bonds, tightening our coaching departments, and working together with them to sort of create movement and how we work together as a football group.
Amazing. Yeah, really intriguing.
That is. I mean, that is full on. No, like, I mean, first thing for me is for you to have the opportunity to go in and be free and not be assigned to a team, and to watch all of those different coaches, all of those different players. No doubt that you would have been able to really take a lot from each of those different coaches. I mean, I would love to have had, or in the future to have a role like that, because you just see so much. You learn so much about the methodology of the club. You actually then pick up little bits from each of those coaches. You better understand all of the players, and obviously, I mean, ultimately that puts you in a position within the club where your knowledge of all of those players is probably one of the best within the club. I mean, that is, the position that puts you in when someone is talking about those players, when you're in those meetings, you just go, yeah, I've seen this player 3, 4, 5, 6 times in the season, and you can add little bits of information to their development pathway. Obviously, if, whatever happens at the end of seasons, etc. I mean, yeah, what a year that must have been.
Yeah,
it was fantastic. I mean, and he's left the club now, but you're working with the under-21s with Ruud in the morning, Van Nistelrooy, and then in the afternoon you're then going and working with the under-9s. How do you deal with that? One team is playing professional football, they're playing in the second tier of Dutch football, and you're working with a Dutch football legend. And the next one, you're working with a coach who's been coaching for 3 years, but he's really important to you because he's got a much better command of the Dutch language to coach the under-9s.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a real challenge. So it was a really cool experience, but then also quite a humbling experience every day.
I think you need those humbling experiences, though, don't you? Because otherwise, if you were working with Ruud every day, it might put you in a situation where I'm not saying for you, because it's, your experiences have probably ground you, but you could quite easily and be justified to run away with your thoughts. And that humbling experience can bring you, can obviously set you in a good stead for the future. But so in terms of the future, where do you want to see yourself? What's like the sort of maybe short, medium, long-term goals, and where do you want to see yourself?
Yeah, I think it's been great to be an assistant coach here, but I think the aim is always to be a head coach. That's where I get my most buzz and my most feel. I think there's 1 or 2 more stop-offs on the journey before I end up in England. I don't see my immediate future going back to England unless something amazing pops up in a really nice club. So
how are you with the English language?
Yeah, terrible. Struggling. If you put me in Liverpool, I'll really struggle. That's my team, so I have to learn a bit of Scouse. I'd have to learn a bit of Scouse to go back there. But I think if there's a couple of stop-offs on the way, love Spain, love Portugal, particularly a particular thing for Portuguese coaching methodology. I worked with the Portuguese coach in Vålerenga in Norway, and set me down a rabbit hole, I should say, of tactical periodization and Vita Frade, and it just, and I also at the same time had quite a lot for Raymond Bahia and his way of teaching. So those things have really led me towards hopefully one day Portugal probably being the priority. And I'd also quite like Germany or Austria. I think the way they develop their youth within these countries is really, really impressive. And it's something which is different to other countries. So, and then if I had to pick a third one, I'd love to go to Italy just to learn a little bit of defending, proper defending. I think we're all getting too caught on pressing and attacking. Let's see some low blocks again.
Yeah, fair
I mean,
play.
just to touch on that, Jack. I mean, even for me, and I'm currently working abroad, but for the people that are watching, that mentality and what you're just talking about there in terms of really having that desire to go to different countries, having that in mind. I mean, even for me, like, it's amazing, like, to be able to hear another coach be able to talk in that way with that sort of mentality. I hope that we can inspire more coaches, more people to have that same mentality and really broaden us as British coaches to explore, to learn and to develop ourselves, because ultimately if we do end up back in England, we are going to benefit the players back in England, and ultimately that is something that all of us at some point would like to have that opportunity to influence, to try and obviously help support the players to be the best. And obviously we want to see England have top level success. So hopefully with our experiences, and Jack, your mentality to go to another 10 or 15 different countries, if you get those, it would be quite impressive.
Yeah, I think I've got to run it by my girlfriend first. The funny thing is, every time we go somewhere, she manages to get a job and out-earn me every single time. So she still ends up being the breadwinner every time we go and change positions. So it's the running joke that when you're actually going to find a job which out-earns her, so she loves it as well. So I think her parents live in different parts of the world.
Okay.
It's really good for us, and I think as a pair, we've got that ambition to go and see new things, and experience new things and see the world. And it doesn't mean we want to leave here. I love the Netherlands. I love the club. I love what I've got here. It's really, really nice. But there's always that tickle where you go, or if you say to me, would you go to this club? Would you go to this club? Would you do this? Yeah, right. That'd be really interesting to see what Portugal would hold, what South Spain would hold, what Italy would hold, what Germany, Austria would hold. It's always intriguing.
That summarises the mentality that I want to just kind of get to a point and summarise on you in this sort of this video, is that I think the mentality that you've displayed, that you've shown in this conversation, is, I think, so many coaches probably have a similar desire, and I think you especially have really been a shining light in that. You've gone and spent time in different places. You've done your A license, your course in different countries, different parts of the world, and you've been willing all the way your journey to get in contact with people through emails, through LinkedIn, for whatever it is, to find opportunities. And they might not necessarily be paid at the start, but you've made it happen. And again, that is absolute credit to yourself, within your character, within your personality, to just learn something new, make it happen. And I mean, the benefits that you're getting now is, I mean, it is credit to you for the hard work, the time, the money, the resources that you've put into it. And I mean, especially for me, just a massive congrats on your current position, your journey. For me, it's inspiring, and definitely take pride in watching your journey along the way, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Echo that. Thanks, I think as well, and the importance of investing in yourself.
Definitely. I think if I was to give two things right now, if a coach is trying to do it, is one, education is so key. Like with the new climate after Brexit, the bachelor's and master's degree, they get you in the door for visas. And it's so difficult to get visas now in Europe. You have to be a high achiever. You have to, particularly academically. And I didn't like school. I was useless at school. I flunked my A-levels. I managed to get in the back door of a university. Somehow they let me in. And then I started to care a little bit. But you need that to get your visa. Every job that I've got, apart from the one in Norway, so the Cayman Islands and now in the Netherlands, I've needed to have my master's degree, my bachelor's originally, and now the master's degree, to get a visa for this type of work. So I would really recommend it. And the second thing is, like, it's not all rainbows. It's not all sunshine. It's tough. And there's going to be a point you want to get off and you want to go home and you want to see your mum. And you want to go and spend the night at home in your bed, you get everything cooked for you nicely, nice meal, all those things, and you haven't got time for it, and you're going to get yourself a frozen pizza, and you bed early and you're back up the next day and you're hearing people speak a language you don't understand. It's not easy. There's been many times I've wanted to jump off and be, sod this, I've had enough. But I've somehow managed to keep on with it. And, that's the toughest part. It's really not easy sometimes when you've got 4 hours sunlight in the middle of winter and you go into a training session and it's minus 15 when you come outside and you have to train because the cutoff is minus 16. That's difficult.
Yeah.
But you keep going with it. So, yeah, that would be what I'd recommend to people is those two things.
Yeah, no, fair play. Thank you, Jack. Honestly, it's been absolutely amazing and an absolute pleasure to have you on. So thank you for your time. Really, really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, Jack, thank you very much. I'm sure if any of the listeners and watchers have got comments or questions, they might put them in the chat, and I'm sure we can try and answer some of them at a later time. But mate, wish you all the best for the coming season. Thank you so much for your time. I know we've run over, but to finish the interview with that sort of advice for people, I think has been truly, truly worth it. So thank you very much for your time. Keep in touch, and we look forward to seeing all of you back very soon.
Cheers, guys.